one of the things I've always wanted to do is be a mentor and an example for the young people in our community so they could believe that their dreams were possible. And I hope they're watching tonight. I hope they believe that their dreams are possible. Hi, I'm John Ewing. Tonight, we embark on a new chapter. I am deeply honored and humbled to stand before you today as your mayor-elect.
My people, so something just happened in Omaha, Nebraska. Something historic. Something that most people aren't talking about. Because, let's be honest, when you hear Omaha, you don't think about Black political power. You don't think about revolution. You probably don't even think about race. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because right now, across this country, there is a battle being fought over who gets to lead, whose stories are told, whose communities get resources, and whose voices are heard, and whose are silenced. From voter suppression to book bans, to the gutting of DEI programs, there's a coordinated effort to push Black progress backwards. That's why Black leadership in politics today is not just symbolic, not just a feel-good moment or political theater. It's about survival. It's about necessity. And that's exactly why this story matters, why we should be paying attention. Because for the first time in the city's 170-year history, a Black man has been elected mayor. His name is John Ewing. And while the headlines will tell you that it's a feel-good milestone, I want you to look closer. Because this isn't just a local win. It's a crack in America's political foundation, a signal of a much bigger fight brewing in the Midwest. A region the media loves to call the heartland, but has been a battlefield for Black survival, resistance, and now political power. But more than that, what does the rising tide of Black mayors and local leaders like Ewing signal? How do we govern in systems built on exclusion? How do we overcome entrenched bureaucracies, economic inequality, and racial biases that run deeper than just who sits in the mayor's office? Because winning is one thing, but changing systems, redistributing resources, reimagining public safety, rewriting the rules of economic opportunity, that's the real fight. So today on The Breakdown, we're unpacking this historic election, John Ewing, the newest Black mayor in America, and why his victory is far more consequential than most realize. Because make no mistake, this is bigger than Omaha. This moment marks the ground shifting beneath our feet. It's a rising tide of Black, brown, and working class people sending a message that can no longer be ignored. It's about reclaiming power in places where it was never meant to be. We're going to break it down. But first, a big welcome to all of our new subscribers and members. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're watching and haven't joined us yet, please consider this your personal invitation. Because here at Panagenius TV, we're not just building a channel. We're creating a global home for Black stories that are told with truth, with intention, and with power. And if that speaks to you, and I hope it does, hit subscribe, tap the bell, drop a super thanks, or join our membership community where we go beyond the headlines with exclusive content, interviews, behind the scenes conversations, and a front row seat to the dialogue shaping our future. Because this isn't just content, no, this is a movement, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. All right, now, let's break it down. So before we talk about John Ewing, before we celebrate his historic victory, we have to get real about the city that made him. Omaha isn't just some Midwestern town. It's a city with a deep, often brutal racial history that has shaped every inch of its political landscape. At the turn of the 20th century, Omaha was a booming railroad hub, promising jobs to thousands of Black migrants fleeing the Jim Crow South. But these migrants quickly learned that freedom didn't mean equality. Black neighborhoods like North Omaha were redlined, locked into cycles of poverty, and starved of public investment. Now, this wasn't an accident. It was policy. Banks refused to lend. Schools were underfunded. Job opportunities were limited to the lowest paying, most dangerous work. And the violence was literal. In 1919, during what's now called the Red Summer, a nationwide wave of racial terror, Omaha became infamous for one of its worst lynchings. Will Brown, a Black man accused with no evidence of assault, was dragged from jail, beaten, and burned alive in front of the Douglas County Courthouse, while police and city officials looked on. This moment wasn't just a tragic event. It was a shattering symbol of white supremacy's grip on Omaha's power structures. And fast forward to the mid-20th century, and the violence took a more systemic form. Redlining, urban renewal, highways, bulldozing Black neighborhoods like in North Omaha. It was economic strangulation by design. But Black businesses were cut off from capital. Black families were locked out of home ownership. Black political voices were silenced at the ballot box. And when Black communities pushed back in the late 1960s, North Omaha exploded in uprisings after police brutality incidents. The National Guard was called in, but instead of addressing the root causes, the city doubled down on policing and surveillance. This is the Omaha that shaped generations of Black residents, a city where power was concentrated downtown and Black neighborhoods were left to fend for themselves. And yet, despite that history, the Black community of Omaha didn't give up. They organized, built grassroots movements, and kept running candidates for office, even when the odds were stacked. But even as the Black population grew, making up roughly 13% of Omaha's total, power stayed firmly in white hands. Mayoral races rarely saw Black candidates make serious inroads. Systemic barriers kept Black voices on the margins. So when the first Black mayor was finally elected, it wasn't a fluke. It was 100 years in the making. But we'll get to that, because first, you need to meet the man who turned things around, John Ewing, Omaha's first Black mayor. Because Ewing's victory isn't just a local political win. It's a signal flare that America's power dynamics are slowly but irreversibly shifting.
Well, John Ewing Jr. has spent decades serving his community with the Omaha Police Department and as Douglas County Treasurer. Now he's hoping his past history will serve him well with voters in the race for Omaha's mayor. KETV Newswatch 7's Pete Cudahy has tonight's candidate profile.
Douglas County Treasurer John Ewing has dedicated his life to serving Omaha.
I have served this community for 43 years with distinction. I have always put you first. You are my special interest group.
Leading the Omaha Police as a deputy chief for almost 25 years before becoming treasurer, claiming his history of service beats his competition.
I have about 3 times as many votes as anybody else, or of all the other candidates combined.
Running on the idea that transparency is key.
I'm going to restore the public trust. I am going to always be honest with the people of this community. And then I'm going to use all of the tools, just like we did in the treasurer's office, to make city government more responsive and accountable to the people of this community.
Emphasizing a need to keep young talent in Omaha.
We've got to do a much better job in this city and this state of retaining our young people. When we have a net loss of 4,500 college-educated people per year, that's not sustainable.
Which he says can be done by providing quality, affordable housing, improving public transit, and developing the city without bending the knee to developers.
I believe that we need a more intentional economic development plan. We have a plan that is often led by developers and the things they want to do, and that doesn't always yield the best results for the people of this community.
Ewing says he's the only candidate with the experience to fix officer shortages.
I'm the only one in this race who's actually recruited police officers, and when I was responsible for recruiting police officers, I doubled the number of applicants and we were always at full staff.
Despite his goals being clear that he doesn't have all the answers and wants the people's input.
Most politicians will tell you they have all the answers. I tell you I know how to get the answers, and that's by listening to other people.
John Ewing believes change is good and says he's the man for Omaha.
I'm the best candidate for the job. I've got a proven track record.
Now let's get to know Ewing, the man who carried the hopes of a community and broke through barriers that seemed insurmountable. Ewing isn't just a politician. He's a product of Omaha's Black experience, a story that's shaped by resilience, service, and relentless commitment to his community. Born and raised in Omaha, Ewing grew up in North Omaha, the heart of the city's Black community. He saw firsthand the challenges, underfunded schools, economic hardships, the heavy shadow of systemic racism. But he also saw something else: community strength, faith, and a fierce determination to build a better future. Before stepping into politics, Ewing served as a police officer in Omaha for several years. Now, this experience gave him a complex, kind of on-the-ground perspective on law enforcement's role and its often fraught relationship with Black communities. He understands the delicate balance between public safety and civil rights, a balance that many politicians try to avoid. In 2014, Ewing was elected Douglas County Treasurer. For nearly a decade, he managed millions of dollars in public funds, earning a reputation as a leader who was competent, transparent, and deeply committed to fiscal responsibility. But Ewing didn't just manage money, no. He built trust. His tenure showed that Black leadership could be effective, practical, and focused on results, qualities that began to chip away at old stereotypes about who could hold power in Omaha. When Ewing announced his run for mayor, many saw it as a long shot. Omaha's mayoral politics had been dominated by white candidates for decades. Racial tensions remained high. Political insiders were skeptical. But Ewing ran a campaign unlike any before it. He didn't just promise change, he built coalitions.
For the first time in 12 years, Omaha will have a new mayor, a Democrat. Democrats outnumber Republicans and registered voters in Omaha, and it showed tonight. Early votes put Ewing ahead by 3,500 votes, and it never got closer here. 56% to 44%, John Ewing, mayor-elect.
His victory wasn't just historic because he's Omaha's first Black mayor. It also marked a major political upset in a city that had been dominated by Republican leadership for years. Since 2023, Omaha's mayoral seat was held by a Republican incumbent who represented the established political order, a leadership that many felt had ignored the city's growing demand for racial justice, economic equity, and community investment. Ewing's win wasn't just a breakthrough for representation, no. It was a direct unseating of this Republican incumbent, signaling a major shift in the city's political landscape. How did he do it?
Throughout this campaign, we've engaged in honest conversation about the challenges and the opportunities facing us and our city. You've told me about the need for affordable housing that meets the needs of all income levels, living wage jobs that provide stability and growth for our families, transparent and fiscally responsible governance that ensures every tax dollar is spent wisely, equitable economic development that revitalizes all neighborhoods, not just a select few.
Ewing's campaign was built on something rare in local politics, a coalition that cut across race, class, and ideology. He connected with Black voters in North Omaha, young progressives hungry for change, labor unions demanding economic justice, and suburban voters tired of business as usual. And it wasn't just who he brought together, but how he did it. Ewing brought his experience, not just as a candidate, but as a longtime Omaha police officer who understands the complexities of public safety from the inside out. He didn't run away from tough conversations about policing and community trust. He leaned into them, promising reform grounded in real understanding. But his message went beyond policing. He spoke to the economic pain felt in neighborhoods forgotten by decades of disinvestment. He promised to revitalize schools, boost jobs, and empower Black-owned businesses. Transparency and accountability, well, those were non-negotiable. This wasn't just campaign rhetoric. It was a promise to tear down the walls of exclusion and open City Hall to voices long silenced. Then there's a digital play. Ewing's team tapped into social media in a way many local campaigns haven't. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, channels where younger voters live, breathe, and organize. Authentic stories, raw moments, community engagement. It created momentum and excitement, especially among young voters who showed up in record numbers. And voter turnout? Well, it wasn't just better, it was historic. The result? An electoral earthquake, the unseating of the long-standing Republican incumbent, the breaking of decades-old political norms, and a powerful message that Omaha, and perhaps America, are ready for a new kind of leadership. So yeah, Ewing's win is historic because of who he is, but even more so because of how he won. But why should you, whether you're in Omaha or anywhere else in America or in the world, care about this? Because this election is a microcosm of something much bigger. It's a signal, a flashpoint, that the political landscape in America could quietly but radically shift under our feet. Let's unpack that. For decades, cities like Omaha have been political battlegrounds where Black voices were marginalized, where systemic barriers kept power concentrated in the hands of a few. Ewing's election is proof that those barriers are starting to crack. We're seeing a new generation of Black leaders emerging who don't just want a seat at the table. They want to rebuild the table. They understand that power isn't just about policy. It's about economic empowerment, community healing, and reshaping narratives. And make no mistake, the resistance to this kind of change is real and fierce. From voter suppression efforts to anti-DEI rhetoric to the rise of political movements pushing back against racial progress, this moment in Omaha didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in spite of those forces. Ewing's victory is a direct challenge to those trying to keep the old order intact. It shows that communities who have been pushed to the margins are organizing, mobilizing, and winning. And it's a blueprint for how this can happen elsewhere. If you're watching this and wondering what comes next, pay attention, because this isn't just a win for Omaha. It's a win for every city where people are tired of being ignored, overlooked, and underestimated. It's a win for the Black political power that's growing stronger every day. But let's zoom out for a minute, because Ewing's victory in Omaha isn't happening in a vacuum. He's part of something bigger, a wave that's been building quietly but steadily. As of May 2025, the United States now has over 143 Black mayors in office. That includes some of the most powerful cities in the country: New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, Atlanta. Cities that shape culture, economy, even foreign policy narratives. But this didn't happen overnight. For most of U.S. history, the idea of a Black mayor was unthinkable. Because for most of U.S. history, Black people were deliberately locked out of political power through slavery, through Jim Crow, through redlining, through mass incarceration, through voter suppression. Different names, but the same game. It wasn't until Carl Stokes in Cleveland, 1967, and Richard Hatcher in Gary, Indiana, that America saw its first Black mayors of major cities. Their elections weren't just symbolic wins. They were direct challenges to power structures that had excluded Black leadership for centuries. But even then, Black mayors were often handed cities that were already in crisis, underfunded, over-policed, stripped of economic opportunity. They were expected to fix problems rooted in systemic neglect without ever being given real resources. So, fast forward to 2025. Why does it matter that we now see Black mayors across the country? Because it signals a shift in who gets to define what leadership looks like, a shift in whose vision gets to shape American cities, a shift from symbolic representation to real political power, at least the opportunity for it. But it also matters because we're in a moment of backlash. From voter suppression laws designed to silence our voices, to book bans erasing Black history from classrooms, to coordinated attacks on DEI, we are witnessing a deliberate effort to roll back the very gains that made victories like this even possible. This isn't random. It's calculated, because every step forward in Black political power has always been met with pushbacks. Reconstruction, civil rights, Obama's presidency. The pattern is clear. That's why Black leadership in politics isn't just symbolic, it's essential. We need leaders who understand these fights intimately, who carry the history in their bones, who know that progress isn't given, it's fought for every time. And that's why John Ewing's win in Omaha isn't just a local story. It's part of a larger battle for the soul of democracy. And in this moment, with the tide of resistance rising, Black mayors across cities big and small are standing on the front lines. Because when policy gets personal, yes, leadership has to be personal too. Winning the election was just the first battle. Now, Ewing steps into a role that comes with sky-high expectations and deeply entrenched obstacles. Let's be clear, flipping Omaha's leadership after years of Republican control was no small feat. But governing, that's where things get real. Ewing inherits a city that's still grappling with stubborn racial and economic divides, public safety debates between reform and law and order politics, an affordable housing crisis that's been quietly escalating, and a business community watching closely to see if his leadership will challenge the status quo. On top of that, the very forces that resisted his election, the old guard of Omaha politics, aren't going quietly. They're already positioning to block his agenda, slow walk policies, and frame every misstep as proof that this historic win was a fluke. But here's where Ewing's decades of public service, his ties to community leadership, and his quiet, steady approach could prove powerful. He's not the loudest voice in the room, but he might be the most strategic. The real question is, can he turn symbolic victory into systemic change? Or will Omaha power structures swallow another reformer whole? That's the battle ahead. So here's the real question, my people. What does it truly mean for Black America when we win these seats of power? When we finally get a first Black mayor, a first Black governor, does the system suddenly change? Not quite. Because the truth is, these institutions were never built with us in mind. City halls, state legislatures, even Congress itself were designed in an era where Black voices weren't just ignored, they were systematically excluded. So when a Black leader steps into power, they're not just inheriting an office, they're inheriting decades, centuries of structural barriers, bureaucracies slow to change, budgets that prioritize policing over communities, economic inequalities baked into policy, racial biases that linger in zoning laws, housing, healthcare, education. This is the uphill battle John Ewing and every Black mayor in America now faces. Winning the seat is just the first move. Transforming what that seat means, that's the real work. But here's the thing. Even within these rigid systems, Black leadership matters. It signals a shift, a push, a presence that says, we belong here. And with each win, we chip away at a system that was never meant to serve us. So I'll leave you with this, my people. How do we hold space for Black leaders to govern differently when the system itself resists change? And how do we, as a community, turn symbolic victories into structural transformation? Because the real power, no, it's not just in representation. It's in redefining what that power can do. So let me know in the comments. I can't wait to hear from you. And if you found this episode insightful or you learned something new, make sure you hit subscribe, tap the bell, and consider joining our membership community where we go deeper beyond the headlines. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng. Until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.